Should we wait maybe 1 or 2 more minutes? Looks like lots. Oh well, I guess we can. Oops, who just joined? Lonet. Okay, let me just put the agenda. All right, guys. Guess we'll start going on. And thanks everyone for coming. And we have a slightly smaller turnout. We've been experimenting with times. Guess this isn't the best one. Hey, Nuwa, have you started the recording?
Yes, I have.
Okay, great. So yeah, so hope everyone can hear me now. So just a quick run through. We just follow through the agenda items. There'll be a portion for discussion and Q&A after each item. So don't worry, you can always ask questions. We always pause for a bit and you can ask stuff. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always post it in general. The recording of this meeting will be put publicly and along with the chat logs as well, just for transparency purposes. So, yep. Anything? So everyone, just take a look at the agenda. Does anyone have anything that they want to include in or take out before we start with the first item? Lorna, I couldn't hear you. Or is it? Okay, I guess no objections to the agenda, and we'll be moving along. So, okay, so everyone can click in on that link on Zcoin's budget. All right. It's pretty self-explanatory. All our income comes from block reward and seed investor donations, and that totals up to be about like 51,000 US dollars ish per month, and that funds everyone on this payroll, which is 11 people currently. This doesn't cover everyone that's currently doing work for us. There's some people who agreed to work for free, and as you can see, the expenditure right now is about 38,000, and this is after we had to do some cuts in salary. So we really appreciate the developers agreeing to take a slight pay cut here. So yeah, as you can see, we have operational expenses, which aren't significant, less than 1,000 US dollars a month. And there are three items that are costing us quite a bit, which is market making. So market making is basically, making sure there's enough liquidity on the market so people can buy and sell Zcoin easily, and especially when in sort of like bear season, volumes tend to be really low, and we want to make sure that there's still a decent amount of liquidity. And market making is currently being done by Hummingbot. So Hummingbot is a bot, but then we are running a liquidity campaign with them so that anyone can run a Hummingbot and earn rewards for providing market making. It's quite relatively easy to set up, and they'll be happy to guide you through. So far, the results of that have been kind of lackluster, but we only have, I think, one more month of payment for them, and then that's it. So that expenditure can be taken off. But we'll see how it goes. PR, we have actually engaged, I think, the best PR company in the space called Ditto PR, and that's about 7,500 US dollars a month. That's a huge expenditure, but they've granted a lot of really good connections that we otherwise would not have been able to. For example, they've got us in contact with Benjamin Powers from CoinDesk, and they got us a lot of placements in little articles here and there and on podcasts, various podcasts and interviews. There's still a couple more that they'll be doing. And I actually really like their work. They do really high quality work and they have very, very good writing. But because of budgetary constraints, we're not very sure whether we should be continuing with this. Now, take a note that Ditto PR normally costs something like 25,000 US dollars. And so the rate that they are giving us is very competitive. Other PR firms like generally charge anything between 10,000 to 15,000 US dollars a month. So it's a huge cost, but we also have to assess, like, in the bear market, a lot of is there a lot of benefit that we're getting, because when you're pushing out news, although you can get on CoinDesk, Cointelegraph, generally not many people are reading it. But definitely, this is a huge cost, but they are a very good company. I'm very happy with their work. Outsource work. So outsource work covers a bunch of things, including some of the work that Arcade we give to Arcadia. It also some include some subsidies to the ZCS. When there are not enough people donating, we also fund them directly. That figure varies from month to month. It is not a compulsory thing, but it is an ongoing cost, especially when we want to accelerate certain things on top of that. So as you can see, we are operating at a slight deficit of about 5,500 US dollars a month. So as a whole, our burn rate is about like well, I don't know, it's like 50 over thousand or so. And it's actually way below a lot of other projects. I know just from asking around that we're actually spending a lot less. We're quite lean. So yeah, I think that's as a whole. You can see there's a breakdown of expenditure. So 66% goes to payroll, which covers all our salaries, cryptography, consultants, and the development costs, including my own salary. 32% goes to all this ancillary costs, and a measly 1.7% goes to the operational expenses. So yeah, does anyone have any questions on the Zcoin budget? Please feel free to ask, or even type in general.
Any interest in bringing up the Open Collective and some of the new income stream ideas that were kind of like, so on that side? Sorry, I'm not good at public speaking.
Yeah. I mean, that's the next item, the alternative funding mechanisms there. Yeah.
Cool.
Did someone try to talk? It was very quiet.
Yes, it was Lonek.
I'll wait for a few more seconds.
Lonik is having some trouble talking. Is that how you say it, Lonik?
I have no idea. Lanek.
One side thing on Ditto PR, just some reference. So Ditto PR has done some really good stuff with a lot of different privacy projects in this space. So they really know what they're doing. It's called, they work with Monero, Decred, and a few others, right?
Yeah, Lonak, I think that's a great question, and that's why we are thinking of not continuing the engagement. It's a minimum 3-month engagement. We were before the huge drop. We were thinking we were going to be entering into a new bull market, and it did look like it until coronavirus happened. So obviously, we didn't anticipate it, and we have to commit to a minimum 3 months. So I think after the PR engagement ends, we probably would stop until the market improves. But yeah, that was our understanding, and even I wouldn't say that the work that Ditto PR is doing right now is wasted, because we are making very, very good connections that will pay off in the long term, especially when you have direct contact with like privacy journalists, like the guy that writes on CoinDesk or privacy stuff. I got to talk to him about Lelantis, what we're doing. So I think that's really valuable. And I do agree that it is not a priority right now, but uh, we was based on certain assumptions that we made before the whole Corona market happened. So I hope that explains it. And yeah, definitely we would not continue unless the market starts taking a real turn. Does that answer your question, Lynette? Yeah. So yeah, remember that we are getting a very huge discount here, and I do hope that once the market turns, we can still continue getting this price because this is really
Test.
Goss. Hey, Goss, we can hear you.
Hey, Ruben. Hey, so I had a question. What would it take to maintain what we have currently in terms of the market makers and also that promotional company Dido? What would it take to maintain those connections in terms of monetary compensation? Via the.
Have you taken a look at the budget?
I haven't, my friend. I do apologize. I'm actually on
Uh,
break. It's my first meeting.
Oh, no worries. It's linked in the general. So market making currently is about $5,000, and honestly, we don't really need this because it was kind of an experiment to see how good community market making would work. So the idea of community market making was usually when you're engaging a market maker, you on top of paying them fees, you would have to pay them. You would need to provide to them inventory, and what inventory is basically I need to provide them a bunch of Zcoin and a bunch of Bitcoin or whatever other side of the pair. Like if I want BNB or I want Ethereum, I need to provide them those amounts so that they can run their market making. Now, because Zcoin doesn't have like huge amounts of money that are upfront, we don't have those type of inventories, and therefore we thought that something like Hummingbot, where we are paying the most of the reward goes to the people who are market making, and they would have to provide their own inventory. We thought that there will be a really good experiment to do. Unfortunately, right now I'm looking at the like the volume that's generated, the amount of liquidity that is being provided, it is actually not very significant. So I mean, we have also committed a 3-month commitment to that. So that's 5,000 US dollars a month. We are on the second month and we have only one more payment to make. PR is about $7,500 per month. So that's a huge cost. But yeah, I hope that answers your question, Goss.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yep. Great question. Okay, so any more questions? If not, we'll be moving to alternative funding mechanisms. Okay, all right, let's move to alternative funding mechanisms. Obviously, if you can take a look at the budget, we only have block reward and seed investor donations, and seed investor donations are not what I call sustainable, right? There is no agreement to them. It's basically me going to them saying like, "Hey, could you help us out? We're kind of short." So they have been very very helpful to us. They have been giving, sometimes they even give like much more, especially during the time that was where we were really really short. But remember that their reward ends in September, and they cannot keep on subsidizing our expenses, and it's always at their discretion. They're not getting anything back, well, besides protecting what existing Zcoin that they have. Obviously, when the block reward ends, we want to make sure that we do have more sustainable modes of funding. Of course, there's a talk about the block reward, which we'll discuss, of course, maybe after this item. But the bad thing about having a block reward is that basically because many of the expenses are in US dollars, so what that basically means is that if we have to sell the Zcoin to actually fund the reward, it is also like a drag on the thing, and it's also not very predictable, like the price goes up and down, and people don't like doing that sort of thing. So although the block reward is good in the sense it aligns the incentives of the development team together with the project, and is relatively transparent, it is first of all centralization, and more importantly, I as a whole, I don't think it is something that should continue forever, right? It's just my personal point of view. We can hear more about that. And obviously, at 6% of the block reward right now, remember that after halving, to match that same level of funding, because the reward halves, we would need 12%. So it is a bigger percentage, but in actual terms, it's less. So yeah, those are things to consider. So one of the things that we've been talking about, especially with Rasik and other people, is to look at other funding mechanisms to supplement the block reward, or maybe eventually even phase out block reward completely. And it cannot be done at one go, right? Because we're still especially in the bear market or so. So one of the things is that, okay, we started the ZCS, which is the Zcoin crowdfunding system, where people can contribute and donate. And although we had some really generous contributions to the ZCS, it is very difficult to get people to continue donating, right? And we have to constantly remind them, constantly get them. And especially when the bear market, everyone's like, why should I donate, right? And there's a lot of free rider economic incentive problems, where the people that don't donate still get the benefits of those who donate. So one of the things that I was talking with Rasik was basically this was his proposal, that we consider having something like open collective, which is kind of like Patreon, where you do like a monthly contribution. It can be even a small amount or whatnot, and that will be in like US dollar worth. And the more that you donate, the more perks you get. That can be in forms of merch, maybe one-on-one time with the developers or the team. We haven't really thought about this very in detail, but we feel that this is something that can be set up with very little cost or time investment, and at the same time, it's a worthy thing to try out. And I think it doesn't hurt to expand our sources of income. I don't know, Rasik, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, so there's a few things in regards to that. So one of the things that's kind of the tragedy of the commons with FOSS is that projects don't have long-term funding mechanisms, right? And with block reward-based funding, outside of it being kind of unsustainable long-term, there's also some associated costs with that, right? So every time a transaction is spent using the block reward, it adds a little bit more to circulation, right? So there's actually some financial incentives for everyone involved when there's money coming in from outside versus it from coming inside. Now, a lot of the projects in the space right now, they're not exactly, what's it called? No one's really thinking about this too deeply. I've been doing a lot of research into this. Actually, Zcoin has some of the best numbers compared to what I'm seeing right now, but a lot of the time what ends up happening is projects survive solely off their block reward until the price gets to the point where they have to make some tough decisions. Now, when we have new money coming in from the outside in terms of different sources of income, open collective is just one option, right? So you can get an open collective flow going. You can get some programs going, like one thing we were talking about, getting some sort of merch or something like that into the space. That's now, I know that may not be as efficient or recurring, but it gets some value brought into the system. Now, there has to be some sort of long-term solution as well, because open collective and donations don't make sense long-term. There's actually this thing Vitalik has been pushing out, which is quadratic voting, which is basically things that are using the currency actually donate downwards to the core protocol, as well as other essential solutions. So that's something that I would recommend people look into, because it may be a long-term solution.
One of the things that I was looking at quadratic voting, I mean, was the issue of identity, right? And as a privacy coin, that's a bit iffy. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Absolutely. So the whole problem with the identity in that situation can, I guess you could solve it to a degree if you treat it the same way you treat with the ZCS, right? In terms of anonymous, like just reputation being built around anonymous personas, right? Like look at it as if like if Arcadia, if we did it as just Arcadia, you didn't know who was behind it. If we put that same ZCS proposal in, would it have gone through, right? And then without our previous history, and if we build up history using the grants system, if we go for, it's kind of like with Monero, right? Where they have anonymous people going in on the grant program with anonymous identities that slowly build reputation from smaller grants to bigger grants, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but how does the voting work in that case, right?
Oh yeah, sorry. Well, there's with quadratic voting, it's always one identity, one vote. But I don't think that would work on Zcoin. Maybe something like one masternode, one vote, but that gets us very close to Dash.
Yeah, that's why I mean I did go down this path before, and I was like, but so Dash seems to be okay. Lonex says Dash seems to be able to continue with block reward. So why do we feel like we can't do it? I think block reward is best. Oh yeah, I mean we are not doing away with the block reward, and you have to realize Dash has a lot of money from it. And I don't know if it was spent in the best way, but I think that's a separate question.
Yeah, so getting rid of the block reward in general is a bad idea for right now. But
Yep.
like essentially the thought process is that my thought process is that if you're having the block reward, you need to kind of subsidize its impact on the network as a whole, right?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, basically, I mean, if there's additional sources of income, you know, people get swag, people are happy, they feel belonging. Like we can have like several tiers where, let's say, if you donate a lot, then you get like this special limited edition swag. And I think it builds like identity and you know, kind of like pride to donate to something. Like I donate to Tor or you know all this type of organizations, and I don't expect anything in return, but I really like the swag, right? I feel proud wearing it, and hopefully, you know, we can have those type of things as well. But yeah, it's kind of. I think this is more sustainable. So I don't know. Does anyone have any objections to using Open Collective? I mean, there's almost no associated cost to it, just time.
Yeah, I think any other revenue streams where we could generate money or following, that'd be great. I think that based on your 6% having to double to 12% just to maintain the current level of funding, I would actually push that a little bit further and say that maybe we should increase the overall block reward a little bit more, perhaps even allocating some of those funds in a general fund for overall development. This would be for short term. At least while Zcoin is in its early stages, I think this would be great for future development and overall growth of the Zcoin community and the blockchain as well.
Sure. Yeah. One of the things is that we actually do have some proposals right now, and right now, I mean, I originally proposed is all in the forums actually. There was a discussion on like what should that community fund percentage be, and that's actually the next item of the agenda. So okay, let me before we go into that, since that is exactly what the next agenda item is. Does anyone have any uh okay, first of all, does anyone have any questions and Open Collective? I guess there's almost like no reason to not agree to it, but I would be happy to hear anything else. And does anyone have any other ideas for any other sources of income? You don't have to, but if you have any like burning idea, please let us know. Okay, if that's no questions, we'll move towards the basically the question that Ghost has as to what should be the allocation of the development reward and other portions of the block reward past halving in September. So block reward halving, I think right now we're getting like what was the total amount? God, my brain's not working at the moment. But basically, whatever the block reward is right now is going to be halved in September. And what that means is the good thing about that is that in halving, there are no more founders rewards. That means none of the seed investors, Portman, and the others aren't going to get anything from the block reward. It is purely going to be a minus, Z nodes, and hopefully a development reward. Now, as you know, I pointed out and Goss pointed out, to even maintain the current level of funding, in Zcoin terms, it would require at least 12%. As you can see right now, even with this amount of money, it's quite tight, and there are a lot of things that I would like to have. For example, QA engineers, GUI engineers, more outsourced work, or even like graphic design, web design. Like everything costs money, and um, frankly, I'm doing a lot of it myself. We're doing a lot of it. Like there's no like, it's almost what we call in Chinese like one leg kick. One guy does kind of everything, and I don't think that's sustainable in the long term. So ideally, the budget is at least, I would say it would be really nice to have 80 to $100,000 per month, and that would cover like even like conferences on top of that, and also more marketing efforts, PR efforts, and stuff like that. Because right now it's really tight. Now, one of the things that I'm really concerned about is that how long. There are a few things that I want to bring up. So first of all, there was the concern that if Zcoin goes up a lot in value, uh, wouldn't then the team would be getting too much. I think that's a valid concern. Secondly, is how long should that period be? So right now, the community consensus, of course, correct me if you read it differently, is anything between 10 to 15%. Some people even talking about 20%, but I personally would be quite happy with 15%. But yeah, and yes, Lornet brings out a good problem. What happened if the price goes up, which I was going to talk about later. So my current thought process, I mean, in a very like ideal scenario, is that okay, 15% of the block reward, and that will cover everything. Of course, if we have other sources of income like Open Collective, if for whatever reason the total amount that that the whole core team gets is above 100,000 US dollars, then those additional funds will be set aside to a separate general fund, either to be used on the ZCS or whatnot. Now, the big question about that separate fund is who should manage it, because if it's going to be managed by the core team, that's just effectively the same thing, right? um, but I was actually hoping that other community members could maybe like not rise up, but like form an additional council to also help with the decision making process, because honestly too many decisions are being made by me, and I would like to devolve some of that to back to the community and people that give a crap about it. So this is something that I'm thinking about. I don't have a clear solution. I think right now we have to make a decision that is everyone comfortable with, let's say, a 15% block reward, and then on top of that, I'm only proposing for an additional 2 years, so that I don't want to extend it for too long to get our mandate. So before the 2 years expires, we can talk about that decision again. But at least I know that for the next 2 years we have some sort of funding, and on top of that, uh, about the additional council and stuff like that. So I want to hear your thoughts and what everyone's feeling on that.
Sure, I think that 2 years is good, and the 15% is obviously a minimum for long-term growth. I would actually implore you to, or the community, to actually consider the 20%, having an extra 5% allocated to a special development fund, something for long term, and also probably a community panel as well. Hello, gentlemen, so that they can have control or at least a say in how those funds are spent or allocated from the long-term development fund.
Sure. I think whatever it is, like, on the terms of transparency, I have no issues, like, whatever it is that the core team is spending. I guess, like, okay, first of all, when you take a look at the budget, do you think that's transparent enough? One of the things that I don't want to review are the exact salaries of each individual person, because that opens, well, first of all, that's a privacy breach, and secondly, it makes it very open for people to like start like headhunting and stuff like that. So I've decided to keep that information secret. But if you can take a look, like, you just take a look at the amounts. It's not a huge amount of money to look at the payroll. So yeah, Lonac, I actually, yeah, 20% is too much. And yeah, I don't know. Oh, hey, weaponize. So yeah, right now we're discussing like what should the block reward be, how should the funding be. So we're discussing the percentage, how long should it be, and the level of transparency required. So I think let's first of all let's talk about the transparency reports that should come up maybe once every quarter or so, or even monthly for that matter. Is everyone happy with the level of detail placed here?
It's a travesty you guys don't have a snack budget.
A snack budget. Well, I've put on like 20 kilos, so I don't think I promised that. Receive any comments, muggers? Well, I guess muggers. Because muggers, you mentioned that you like transparency, so I was wondering, like, is this transparent enough for you, muggers?
Hello.
Hey,
Hey, can you hear me?
yeah,
Yeah. This is I don't know. I like this. I mean, especially as like investors, would you really invest into something you don't really understand behind the scenes? This is
yeah.
perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Everyone else okay with this? Yeah. Okay, Longneck brought up. Ruben, you mentioned that people are working free and all listed are working on the cut. So what's the actual budget for the team? I would say I think you add maybe a 10% on top of that. You have to click the mic button, weaponize. You're not actually muted by default. You're muting yourself. So there's actually, like, there are certain people that like, for example, like Sandra, so working for us, unfortunately, because we had to cut the marketing and stuff. And they are like, even Sebastian Mack, that was someone I had to cut as well, which is quite unfortunate because it means that all the stuff then comes back to me. But yeah. But Sandra's doing well, so don't worry. We're hooking her up, so there's no issue there. Okay, so there's no issue with the transparency with report. I think this is a good amount of detail. Yes, weaponize. You can type, and I guess now let's talk about the percentage. Is everyone here okay with 15%? I know someone's talking about 20%, but is
So
everyone? Yeah, go on, Rasi.
yeah, so to build off of Ghost's idea of is it Ghost or Ghost? But building off of his idea of 20%. So I know that does bring up some issues in terms of just like public presence. Well, even 15% brings that up. But what we could potentially do if this market continues, potentially have it at 20% for a period of time, and then have it drop down to 15% once the coin reaches a certain price point at which it's no longer needed.
How would you do
Because
that without unnecessary hard forks, though? Are you saying that we program in a 20% for the next 6 months and then drop it down to 15% after?
so you could. So I'm thinking maybe like right now, if I understand correctly, you guys are using the same block reward format as Dash, right? Where it's like the block it's set in a parameters file, right? What if we did like an if statement that, hey, if it's under this block,
Oh
which
no,
if we have a 5 minute,
What you mean? You mean like based on price? How?
No, not on price, but like we could have it as a timer thing, and if the price recovers before, then we can just hard fork it out. But we could say, hey, for the next 3 months it'll be at 20%, and then whichever comes first. If the price goes reaches a certain point, then we can hard fork it. But if not, then we can just have it expire. Or
Yeah, I
like
don't
that.
think anyone would be angry for a reduction in the block reward. Like you can't increase, but you can reduce. I think that's how I feel about it. But yeah, I mean, that's an interesting idea about having like let's say 3 months of 20%, and then it goes back down to 15%.
So to answer your question, Lanak, on why I agree with Ghost in terms of the 20% versus 15%, it's because there's a lot of uncertainty involved in this, right? So I've seen a lot of projects. So just to give some background on what my like experiences have been on this. So I've been doing a lot of cyber stalking in terms of other crypto projects, and in my position at a development company, I get exposed to a lot of internal budgets quite often. And usually, what happens is that people will budget for a certain amount, and then they don't give themselves enough headroom for, you know, either rainy days or
Your mic just cut off, Rasi.
extended rainy days. Sorry, my phone went to sleep while I was talking.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just yeah. I like being prepared for a lot of this stuff, and for the most part, a 20% for a short period of time has no real impact over the long-term financials compared to a 15% over a long period of time. It's just with the spending rate.
Lonek, one of the things that you also have to consider is that even at 12%, we aren't breaking even, and that's with donations of about 10,000 US dollars on top of that. And that means that if the price goes below $3, that goes into the rate further. So I mean, of course, I hope the price improves. I don't know where it's going to be right now. I mean, um, I make the kind of mistaken assumptions that we will be entering into a bull market. I think most people did, and one of the problems with the block reward is exactly that uncertainty, right? Like I said, like right now it is. I can tell you, it's really stressful for me. Like thinking about how to balance the budget, it keeps me awake at night, and I would say 15%, like at this level, just makes it like okay, I can kind of sleep. But if it, when I see the swings going down below $3, I was like, oh, that's, maybe I had to start having discussions with developers again, and that's like a really bad morale boost uh for the developers. So one of the things that, yes, obviously there would be how to say, other side income, but honestly those type of things would take time for it to kick up. Like, even if we start open collective now, I'm not going to expect like, well, I'm going to get like $3,000 a month from that. I'll be happy if we get like $300 per month from that. So yeah.
So, Scott, Lonak brings a really good point about the remaining percentage outside of that.
Yep.
So, honestly, I'm not that as versed. I'm very versed in terms of the stuff on the development side and things like that. But I know jack shit about the Scott breakdown of miners versus masternodes.
Mm-hmm.
What has I know that znodes were a big thing back when we first started working with y'all. Is that still the norm in terms of more masternodes than miners? Or is that a metric you can calculate?
Oh, right now, what would you mean? More master node? No, actually, have more miners than master nodes. I've just based off the stats of the pools showing how many miners there are. Yeah, I think it's about even. Let me see. I think mining pool stats, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, looks like it has dropped a bit. Yeah, there's only like from the ones that are reporting, it used to be like 5,000 something. Now it's dropped down to like 2,700 miners. So yeah, 2,700 miners with so we have like 5,000 over Z nodes. Of course, not some of them. Some people are owning multiple Z nodes as well. So I would say it's almost about even, I guess, in the terms of participation of people. Yeah.
So, what is the economic impact of miners getting block rewards? So, uh, I know that there's in terms of like price action and things like that. Do you know if the miners are primarily converting to fiat or exiting Zcoin immediately in terms of the majority of them? Is there anything we can, like any measurable data we have on either side?
Well,
So
Christy
that,
and Henry Kwan actually took a look at our thing, and they said that we actually do have a lot of what does he call those? Cultish miners? Not cultish miners. In the opposite of nomadic miners. Miners that are just locked into the ecosystem, and they're selling part of it but keeping a lot of it as well. So yeah. Lorna, yeah, I mean, right now, take a look at the forum that John Smith posts, and you see the way that we currently process is 15% dev fund, maybe 35% Z notes, and 15% minus, or 55% minus 30% Z notes. But of course, this is all up for discussion right now.
so if
Yeah.
we have cultish miners, that's actually really good because a lot of the time when miners get I think cultishness should be rewarded. That's
Yep.
something that's we want to.
All hail Zcoin.
I'll bring the Kool-Aid.
Oh yeah, so maybe like someone else can talk about like the benefits of proof of work. I mean, basically the miners, the whole idea of proof of work is not just about the security stuff. Right now, anyone who's mining Zcoin are really like just mining it because they believe in it, or like they have nothing better to mine. Because if you mine Zcoin right now, in most places, your electricity cost does not even cover the amount that you mine right now. So we believe that, and the whole purpose to me on proof of work is basically because it's a way to distribute your coin. If you want to get distribution, you do proof of work. If you just want to stop distribution and you don't want to have anyone new coming in, and you just have people rely on getting it on exchange, then you go to proof of stake or something else. But yeah, many, I can tell you, many miners do actually have Z nodes. So yeah.
Are we in the POW part of the agenda or?
Oh no, we're still talking about the division, because he's questioning about why are we allocating so much to miners. I guess it depends on how you view the the value of distribution, right? If you have ASICs, basically you take a look at Zcash, almost all the block reward goes to like Bitmain and their friends, right? Because there's only two companies that make like Zcash, or maybe three companies. I think there's Inner Silicon and Zcash. Maybe that's it. I think there's two only. And what happens then is that how many of those machines they sold, it was really, 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 really small amounts that actually are sold to the public. The vast majority is being owned by these two companies. And that's the reality for ASICs. As long as you have ASICs, they are making money making machines. Why would they sell it out to the user? It's yeah. And the beauty about GPU mining is that it's a lot easier to just jump in, and you don't have ASICs. And obviously, commodity hardware mining as a privacy coin. I think this is also something what Christy brought up as well. Is that like as a privacy coin, the decentralized distribution is more important rather than just like, let's say, like something like Ethereum, which is a smart contract kind of platform. But okay, let's talk quickly about the distribution of the rewards. I mean, like, to me, Z notes, should they be rewarded? I mean, the more that we push to Z notes, the more that we start resembling a pure POS model, and then that makes it, well, why don't we just go full proof of stake, right? That's a very, very fundamental change. It would require a lot of work, and there's a lot of vulnerabilities of proof of stake if you're not careful. Uh, and I would be kind of against that for the short term. But as maybe the next halving or the halving after that, then maybe a proof of stake model makes more sense. But I do think it's important for the first 8 years or so, or at least 6 years, to maintain the distribution of the coin. Oh God, yeah, Yansu list. Okay, all right. Okay, I guess we have some disagreement here, but I think everyone's okay with at least a 15% development fund. What would your Lorna, what would your preferred distribution be? And then we'll move on to the next topic.
I'm sorry, what was the question, sir?
Oh, the question is that what should like, let's say we agree on the 15% development fund, or a 20% for 3 months, then 15%. What the remaining percentage? How should it be divided? Should it be 35% Z notes? Should it be 50%? Like the remaining portion, how should it be allocated between Z notes and miners?
I don't know enough to make a decision on that. Sorry about that.
No
Let's move forward.
worries. Yep. Okay. All right. Lonek. Okay. So I want to move on with this, but then please, I think you have some good points. Please bring it up in the forums because that's where it's all then. But this was an opportunity to discuss and find out more. Okay, so we'll move to the next topic. Oh my God, where's the agenda? Okay, discussion of possibility of creation of a separate council. Okay, so there was some talk about creation of a separate council to manage funds that were above, let's say, $100,000 or so. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? So actually, one of the things that I discovered when looking at other so-called decentralized projects, they aren't actually as decentralized as you think they are. Like, for example, like Grin, people talks about it as the most like very decentralized grassroots projects. It's actually the most centralized grassroots projects. You have a Grin council that is appointed directly by the equivalent of Satoshi, and basically, they grant their own salaries to themselves. You can take a look at it. I mean, just take a look at the way the Green Council works. So it's a lot of optics about the so-called decentralization as well. Monero is a lot more open, because of the ZCS and the funding mechanisms as well. But a lot of decisions also happen like very internally within their core team. For example, the hard forks and stuff like that. But the thing is that we do need a separate council. How should they be elected? Should there be any qualifications? Like, should they own the Z node? Should they have some like understanding, or it can be just some regular Joe that knows nothing, right? Or would it start with being elected first by the core team members, and then later on have some sort of election? I don't have anything clear on this, and I don't want to hold up the 15% for this, but it is a discussion that we should be having over the next few months as well.
We should probably have some protections against conflict of interest. For example, myself, I probably shouldn't qualify for any sort of council just because
Yep.
Arcadia is doing partnership work with the foundation itself. So,
Oh yeah, does anyone have any relevant comments? Gosh, I would be not even in the console as well. Yeah. Yeah. Anyone can jump in with voice. Anyone can talk in chat.
Praise
Okay.
Zcoin.
Yeah. I want to say, let's see. Oh, have you followed like they have kind of like node validator like kind of election quasi elections with on the Komodo blockchain. So like I'm kind of like for that idea, and it seems to like work kind of well. But
Receipt might have
maybe
some
maybe
ideas on that, but I'm always a bit worried about those like voting validation mechanisms because it always seems to end up being some sort of like fake fake voting, right? Like take a look at what happened to EOS and or like the whole like collusion to vote people in because and it really becomes very centralized in that sense. With Monero, like there's no even requirement to even hold like Monero. You just have to be seen as doing a lot of stuff for Monero, and then you get funding from the ZCS, and there's no like official title per se. uh but I'll take a look more at the Komodo stuff, but maybe I think Rasik has some knowledge on the Komodo stuff. Do you want to chime in on that, Rasik?
One sec. Sorry, just getting some trouble with unmuting. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah. So with the Komodo, I like their voting mechanism. I don't know how we would implement that on Zcoin, to be honest. And in terms of their elections, it's called. I have very limited experience with it. Had a few conversations, but not much knowledge outside of just the basics. Sorry.
Hmm. Well, okay. I'll make it a point to look at it and see how that works. I'm just always very cautious about validated elections, but yeah. Okay. Yeah, Decred is good with governance, but we can't really emulate that because of the way they do proof of work and proof of stake. It's quite a different structure. And actually, yeah, I don't know. It always ends up being semi-centralized as well. But it's a lot better than a lot I've seen. I think they probably have one of the better governance models. It's always about like whether the small people are going to vote or not.
I think
Okay.
with
Yep.
I was about to say wait, I want to add one more thing. I think with prices like this low, so therefore it's easier to get lower barrier entry to get a Z node, even with some one savings. Then I think it's not too out of the realm to say like, okay, those who have skin in the game and they can just sign off to say like, oh hey, I've been a member of the community and I have a Z node. And I
Hmm.
think just a known person, someone who like answers queries such as helping out people when they have the typical Z nodes process should also kind of just be in the running for the council. So someone not directly on the team, but also someone who's invested enough to want to see it succeed, and they trade in their time to like help out. So if we even don't even do the whole proper elections, it can just be like, oh hey, everyone knows these people though.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of how I feel. Like that's how it should start. Like from people that the community always sees in the chats, they're always contributing, and that's kind of how it works with Monero as well. This it's just like people who are known in the community of obviously contribute. I mean, like coming on this call, it's pretty like a big sign that you guys are invested in Zcoin. Not on the monetary level, but you give a shit of what we do. So yeah. Okay. I'm actually for that. If anyone has any election ideas, if not, but those are good suggestions. I just wanted to sort of jump, get gauge community feedback on that. Okay, so Zcoin adoption ideas. Um, so yeah, there was a Zcoin working group on that. And there was some ideas there. It's being championed by Rasik, so maybe Rasik, can you talk about that?
Absolutely. This is something I know about. Yeah. So With on the working group thing, I noticed that there was a significant lack.
You dropped out again. Ah,
We lost you.
How about now? Okay.
Yeah.
So I noticed there was a significant lack of like community adoption, and one of the things that I was actually working on for a different project was actually just identifying like what makes money into money for cryptocurrency, right? Like for the most part, people are focusing on the merchant adoption side of things, right? Which is great, but it doesn't really help if no one's using the actual gateways available, right? So there's a tri-faced element that needs to be worked out, and I think the working group can be used for that. The first element is, of course, merchants, places where you can accept it. Second is people willing to use it, incentive to actually use Zcoin versus anything else, right? Because in the past, you could be able to say, hey, we're a privacy coin, you should use us because of the privacy. But that doesn't really work nowadays because of the,
Yep.
Yeah, you have to have some sort of, now, one of my project managers, Joe, I think he mentioned in the chat about potential incentives for like using Edge Wallet or something like that, which I think might be a good option. And yeah, the working group is just in general for things like getting merchants, getting users, making memes. We need a lot of that. And yeah, also ignore my philosophical rant in the chat. That's inbuilt into my initial task list, because I went into what is money, and that's not a conversation I should have started with.
Yeah, because I do think that one of the things that it would be good to push through like traffic through existing people that they do like like people like Change Now and stuff like that. They are already supporting it. And always that fiat conversion points are a bit difficult. But I don't know. So you're saying merchants, and what was the other limb again?
Users to actually spend. So merchants to have the place to spend, users to actually be able to spend. And I guess the third one is one that I don't know how to solve, so I haven't really mentioned it, and that's retaining value in terms of a transaction. Because one of the problems that having it's called Zcoin as a medium of exchange is that you also have to have it be a store of value, which becomes a problem when you're talking about something that has a large base and support through its ability as a it's got something that's speculative.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's a work in progress. It was just started like a couple of days ago, so I don't expect anything. But if anyone has great ideas, or if you have a business that wants to accept Zcoin, let us know. I
Yeah,
think
if you're a business that if
go
you're a
on.
business that wants to accept Zcoin, shoot me a message and I'll help you set up whatever you need to actually get it running in terms of accepting it.
Yeah, and also we're compiling a merchant list. So we've been trying to get those people to give us like the full list. So if you have a business that accepts Zcoin, we have a merchant map that we are populating right now. Do we have the Apis honey there yet? I remember I bought honey using Zcoin, which was quite cool. Okay,
Oh,
so
all right. I'll take it for a bit. I was just gonna ask, yeah, Evan, can you, the guy that's asked about that has instructions on how to onboard merchants with Zcoin, can you post your contact in there? Oh, okay, Zcoin merchants. Yeah, and then I don't know if you remember just in the group chat where I told you I was meeting that business owner that owns like 3 businesses.
yeah,
That like one was like a restaurant and the other's kind of a jazz bar and the other's just like hair supplies and stuff. Yeah, it was they were open to it, just like okay, get them set up with a wallet like Edge wallet, and just like okay, hey, just put your receiving address like right here, and then telling them like okay, the staff still won't have access to it, and they were still just sort of like skittish, but they seemed like they were the like a later adopter. They later got on this food delivery
mm,
app called Shuttle here in Korea, and they I think through BitPay they accept like cryptocurrency payments. So like, but only they only take in Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin Cash. So like that could possibly be a point of contact if we get on something like BitPay if they're open with that. Then it seems like even these the skittish merchants, it's like okay, you're indirectly like accepting crypto.
Hmm. Yep. I think we really need like I really like that BTC Pay server. I mean, it's not cheap. And Akshay, thank you so much for doing a lot of the work for that. But yeah, it's just currently with the funding situation, we can't complete it yet. Okay. If no further ideas on that.
Oh wait, what's the? Oh, hopefully my mic is like harder if I put it close to my mouth. Hey, what's the maybe timeline for what's that receiver address privacy? Like,
Ah,
because
right.
address.
We talked about that on the roadmap. Which is going to be the next topic anyway. So okay, so we're talking about the roadmap right now. I'll just link it here. Does anyone? Okay, so we have the first question about receiver address privacy, and okay, I'll talk about receiver address privacy right now. So actually, the work for receiver address privacy has been actually already completed, and the problem was that um, because we're already kind of halfway moving into core 14, that needs to be ported over to the new core, which isn't a huge amount of work, but we didn't want to both launch receiver address privacy and the deterministic master nodes together, and we felt that more important to it was more important to do the deterministic master nodes first and get that rolled out, and then we will bring back the master node privacy. Hang on, there's someone at the door. Let me just say that. I think.
Is that lunch?
Yeah, it's lunch. Okay, so so the timeline for that is that okay, so right now we are already testing deterministic master nodes and everything's kind of set up on the private test net, and that's under testing now. Hopefully in a week's or so time we can open that out to the public. Once we open that up to the public, then maybe another 2-3 weeks or so before we can get it on mainnet, and then after that, I'm planning to then dedicate a developer to porting the BIP 47 over. So maybe I guess another 2 months or so. Yeah. Seville. Yeah. Does that answer your question? No. All right. Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right. So
Yeah, we can hear
and
you. Sorry, just in watching this just.
yeah. So any other questions on the roadmap? I also actually posted a video which went into it as an overview. Okay. No. Lonax typing.
Okay, for like Elysium, sorry, on the roadmap,
Hmm.
I did like a bunch of merchants, like so far, maybe limited or not limited to Thailand, that are basically ready to go, or business enterprises that's like wanted ready to go for the privacy, listen, Elysium like layer, ready to utilize.
Right now, that's kind of like in Parliament's court. I mean, Elysium was actually like his initiative. He originally mentioned that there was really interested in building about it, but that came. I don't know. There's some complications right now. I think that's all I can say about that. So right now, I mean, like, although we kind of spend a lot of time of it, like there were businesses that were actually also interested in integrating them, and now like Thailand, I think a bank just launched its own stable coin. So that's pretty interesting, and I wonder how that all is going to tie in. But my idea right now is that instead of people launching their own tokens, maybe they can use it as a like to make their own little voting applications and stuff like that. Honestly, I mean tokenization. I don't know. I mean, everyone talks about it, but the only people that anyone's building tokens on is actually Ethereum, and still like 80 to 90% of them are total shit. So I'm a bit more realistic on that. But yeah, we have some people that are interested, but I have to follow up with Parliament on that because it seems to be a rapidly changing situation right now. Yeah.
Okay, and then I wanted to ask, is Dash the only coin that's leading the way with like chain locks and LLQM? And it seems like from what I've just seen, they require a whole lot less confirmations, so exchanges are playing nice with that. So you think like once we implement those same schemes, then it'll just like push us ahead on the curve because then it's like cool, less confirmation is needed, and it'll put us edge on a whole bunch of other coins and therefore usability. And then I possibly make a case for just like to kind of keep or maintain, basically increase the lion's share of mining rewards towards like Z nodes because now they're actually doing something like more than ever.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That's the thing is that so right now, yes, I actually have been like in talk with several exchanges, and they are saying that yeah, because you're a smaller chain, there's a risk, more of a risk of a double spend attack, and therefore, we feel that like we have to have a large amount of confirmations required. Of course, once chain locks comes into play, then you can reduce that confirmations by quite a bit. So maybe you only need one confirmation or two confirmations. I think two confirmations is safe, which would bring that time down to maybe like 10 minutes or so. One of the things I actually really want is because right now MTP is such a freaking bloat, which with like 200 kilobytes per like even an empty block. If we can move the block power or something like that, we can even drop that block time further to 2.5 minutes. So what that means is that you can get exchanges to accept your deposit within 5 minutes or so, and I think that would be really good for usability as well. And of course, you have those instant transactions. I don't think exchanges, most major exchanges, are still not willing to accept instant exchanges, but they are willing, instant sends, but they are willing to reduce the confirmations required to maybe two or three. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned that because I'm noticing like a good parallel. Like I kind of grew up in like the South Side of Chicago, where it's like the hood, and nowadays with this kind of global crisis, people are more open than ever. The ones who used to chase vanity are now like open to buying like stocks and shares. And I think if we emulate the experience for Robinhood app, because I'm surprised when people was like from like the super low income neighborhoods now saying like, oh, I'm gonna buy this share of this map and this and the other. And then they've also came back to me and wanted to use like crypto, and it's like cool, like, and I always throw them on the edge wallet, so it's like okay, now I think if we emulate that experience in addition to the low confirmations, because Robinhood does something like they kind of would be like, okay, here's a basically instant deposit, but only up to 1,000 that will cover for it, even though it takes days for it to get that. Um, yeah, like that if we can get to that feature, that could possibly push up more usability and adoption.
No, definitely. I mean, I do think fast confirmation time important, which is why chain locks is on. I don't know if we continue using chain lock on the road. I mean, we're taking a look at stuff like Avalanche and whatnot, but we kind of also have the balance about like what we like best and what we can implement right now, right? So I do think that chain locks is a good solution for now. And I do think that we do need that more instant transactions and stuff, but that has to come after chain locks and stuff. So I think our idea right now is that by September we should deliver on all the deterministic master nodes and the LMQ and the Lantus. and maybe chain locks. I think like that's realistic. Where there's only like another 6, actually 5 months more. So yeah, that's and that's kind of why we actually are. What I feel we're kind of understaffed, and if you take a look at the rate of development that we're putting out, we're actually doing a lot of work for the small team that we have. I mean, like take a look at Dash, right? They've been working on evolution for like fucking eons, and many coins just like not moving at all. So yeah. Yeah, definitely. Usability is something that we want to improve, and one of the things that we've been actually trying to research on, talking to Risi and also talking to Aram on it, is the ability to do instant sync for wallets, which is something we're really excited about. I don't know whether we can make it by September because we have a lot on our plate. But what instant sync would allow is basically you turn on your wallet, bam, you're already exactly synced to the blockchain. But yeah, and you can choose to sync the entire blockchain if you want on that.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Actually, like if you use the Electrum server now, you can get quite a quick sync as well. So yeah.
Yeah, instant sync is really cool. We just have to modify it a little bit so that instead of it being so the main company that like made it is Coda Protocol. How they built it was that no one keeps a copy of the chain outside of archive servers, and there's no real archive servers on their network. But so we wouldn't want to do that. We would want to still have people holding the chain, right? We need masternodes and miners and everyone else to be full validators, right? So basically, the current concept that we're currently researching a little bit, and we'll be putting something up on the ZCS maybe at the end of the month or something like, or end of next month or something like that, is basically where we have a modified ZK sync so that as soon as you open up the wallet, everything works as if you were fully synced, but in the background, it's still syncing up so that you're still a full validator, just for the purpose of keeping the security of the network and not going against, you know, one honest full node rules, right?
Yeah. Okay, so a little bit brings up about like decentralized exchange options. Honestly, I mean we've talked about it, and actually right now because Parman's like cooped out at home, he's actually trying to come up with a proof of concept DEX for Zcoin, which I just found out like 1 week ago. So we'll see how that goes. That's something that's interesting. But one of the things that I was like really realistic about was that many people just build the DEXs and no one uses them, right? And right now, what I'm more realistic about is that, for example, the first iteration of swap capability within the wallet would actually be to use maybe like a variety of providers that do already do this swap capabilities. So, like for example, like Change Now or SideShift or something like that, and what that means is that I've talked to them. I said, "Do you need KYC? No. Would you accept it to be tunneled through the Tor connection? Yes." So there's already that, like there's some element of privacy there. I think for most people that would be good enough. For maybe people who are like more conscious of want to do within a fiat, maybe something like BISC would be more practical. But then it's like such a shitty user experience. But yes, this is actually something that we are thinking about, privacy focused swaps. There's actually right now a P2P exchange which hasn't really taken off yet. But what they do is really interesting, is that every coin that goes into their P2P like exchange gets Sigma minted, and every time they withdraw, it's actually Sigma spends. So that's actually pretty cool. But they right now I think they're having some staffing issues, and that's quite sad. We've been actually really excited to try to announce that, but then because of their current issues, we haven't been able to. But that's like I guess some insight as to what's happening that we're kind of focusing on. So definitely it's on our radar. Porman is working on something on it. The way that we're looking at swap capability is kind of like a semi-centralized solution, but then if we have a bunch of providers and it's no KYC and you do it via Tor, I think that's a good in between that can utilize existing liquidity rather than try to build liquidity from scratch again. Because I mean, you can build a DEX, but then are people actually going to put stuff on it? That's a very, very big question. So a little bit, because I know you're involved with Beam, like the atomic swap capability within the thing, has that marketplace really taken off? Do you know much about that?
That's a question for a little bit.
Yeah,
Or
is he little bit? Is he gone? Oh yes, gone. Oh, okay. Anyway, while we're waiting for a little bit, is after September will probably continue to be a part of Zcoin? I think yes. Obviously, he has an exchange to run and stuff like that. But I do think that he's still passionate about Zcoin. But yeah, he wouldn't get a founder's reward anymore. That's about it. Little bit, is he here? I guess we can ask him later. All right. What's the next in the agenda?
other matters.
Just a
Sorry? Did someone say something?
random side thing. For Komodo decks, I dropped off around the decks conversation. My phone died, but for Komodo decks, I've already done all the integration stuff. I just have been too lazy to make a PR. So if someone reminds me tomorrow, I'll do it.
Okay. Is there any traction on that?
Oh, they have a mobile app that's really nice. Everything else sucks.
Does anyone know that a DEX that is not Ethereum based that has good traction?
IDEX does, or Rudex.
Really?
Or sorry, not IDEX, Rudex. Yeah, those guys, the BitShares based guys.
Uh-huh.
A lot of coins that are trying to avoid KYC go through there. They have this whole bridge system. It's really interesting.
Isn't that like what BitShares did, and then suddenly they implemented KYC and then shut down?
Well, they implemented KYC on the main exchange. Rudex doesn't require KYC because it's not the main one. It's you just connecting to the network and doing its own thing.
No,
So
but
how it
BitShares
works?
has shut down, right?
I don't think so.
No, the exchange. What was it called? What was that
Ruben,
exchange?
a little bit is here. If you can type out your question for him just now.
Oh, a little bit. So you mentioned about the privacy focus swap. I actually answered it, but uh, but anyway, I was interested to know because you're kind of quite following what Beam is doing, and they have the whole that atomic swap market going on. I was wondering how much is that in use? Have you used it? How's the user experience there? Do you think it's a viable option to do those sort of things? I mean, right now they only swap with Bitcoin right now, or what? How's your experience been with that? Okay, so far the toughest part is connecting a BTC wallet. Is there a lot of use on it though? Like, can I complete a transaction in half a day? I see. There's usually one atomic swap offer up, and to complete this, you have to stay online. Hmm. What are the swaps available? Is it only Bitcoin and Beam? Oh, interesting. Cute them. Right. So yeah, I mean, this is kind of like my thought process, right? You can build all this out, and then you have all this fancy stuff, but then, like, if there's not going to be a lot of utility, and that's kind of why I for the moment, I kind of like the idea of just utilizing existing swap services, that, like Change Now or SideShift or Switch Chain and all the sort of stuff. To do the swaps because they already leverage off existing liquidity without KYC or Tor. It's not the most decentralized thing, but I feel that we have to take a bridge, like a in between pure decentralization and what's practical. But yeah, StealthX and GodX, they actually approached us. I didn't know whether they were legit or not. So if you say they're legit, then yeah. Are they DEXs? Interesting. Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, Goldex is on. Let's see, is one of the featured kind of exchanges that you can use in the
In what? In Edge, okay. Oh, I better search my emails then. Do they have the Zcoin support? Oh yeah, they do. And quite close to. So how do you use this? Well, we take a look. All right, that's cool. Redux. Okay. All right. Does anyone have any other questions? We're approaching the 1.5 hour mark. Yes,
Yayan Sulis is typing.
yeah, the Yayan Sulis is just complaining about the price every day. He's not even in the chat. Yeah, see.
Is there any like decentralized exchanges that's really big, like in China these days, just to get money in and out? Like so far, like what I've seen is just mainly underground kind of Telegram chat rooms and only verified like WeChat chat rooms. Has anybody emerged from there?
Yes, it's kind of weird. The cryptocurrency privacy scene in China. Can't say much because of this call being recorded, but I know a lot of shady shit's happening on the development side of that area. It's just interesting. So it's like a lot of the cryptocurrencies in the area will go and get the blessing of the government, and usually that doesn't entail just that entails a little bit of transparency that a privacy coin shouldn't have, so to speak. There's also a significant amount of it's like rural investing. Basically, these companies will go in with marketing, and they'll go down to rural areas of China and start getting smaller or what's the word, like lower income people to start investing more than they can.
It's like
generate
plus
for.
token, right? Basically.
Pardon?
It's like plus token.
Yeah, it's like plus token going to Indian villages. Yeah, exactly like that. In terms of, well, not scammy, but more just exploitive. It's exploitive of a lot of people that may not be aware of what they're investing into. And I've seen it across like multiple cryptocurrencies in China. And most of the time you don't see them actually leave China. They just kind of hang out there for a bit and then they disappear.
Yeah, so Matthew Graham, I think he works for Sino Global Capital, and he was talking about like this is a really huge thing in China where, some guy claims that he has a bunch of like huge investors, and you actually realize that he's holding a lot of small people's money, and that seems to be like a lot of shady shit going on. But yeah. I don't know if that's the kind of investors we want to have. Would be great for a price, but then it burns people. So I don't.
Hey, if you guys are willing to pay for my flights, I'll go down to Indian villages right now.
Okay, does anyone have any questions? I mean, just quick. Like we had that discussion about like the proof of work change. It's still an ongoing discussion. I personally like Proc Power a lot. It will probably be modified slightly, just to be different, and to suit the Zcoin's ecosystem a bit better. And the main reason for that is just that MTP is just such a resource hog, and the proof sizes are just so big. And I would really like to drop the block time further to like even 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes. And even with instant transactions, I mean, like, if an exchange is only going to accept it after 1 or 2 confirmations, still the block time does matter. So I would really like to to try to pick a algorithm that can support that, and MDP isn't it. So that's just kind of what I wanted to say on that matter. Does anyone have any questions on anything right now? It's the free for all session.
I have a question
Question:
for the
What was
community.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna ask. So what would be your ideal like order of operations? Procpal first, then chain locks, or would you do chain locks first, then procpal?
Chain locks first.
I guess. Okay.
That's a really good question, D Holiday.
Yeah, so right now the decisions final, like I actually hope to I'll put so I actually started a trade on the final stuff, and I intend to do that final call by the end of April. And I think that should be enough time. We've been talking about it for more than a year. And of course, things have changed. But I think that, as a whole, I don't think everyone's going to be against like a 15% block reward. But yeah, that's the final thing for ProcPow. Because right now we are already like neck deep in development work. Of course, Christy says it can be implemented in 2 weeks. I was only thinking of like possibility changing ProcPow at the end of the year, rather than rushing into something like that, because it's not necessary as a nice to have, and we should really have all hands on deck on Lelantis. I don't know how everyone feels about that, but yeah. I think it'll be good to get a decision by August for the proof of work algorithm. So let me just put this down. I'll put end of April for block reward, end of August for proof of work. Okay. Chain locks, the deterministic muscle, is that? Yeah. Lelantis is actually more important than anything, but mainly because we are privacy coin and we need that. And that's our own so yeah, quick shout out for the mobile wallet. The mobile wallet is ready to test for Android right now, on testnet. I believe AJ and Nuwa are currently testing it. Do you want to give a report on that, AJ? Have you managed to give it a go?
I'm still syncing my testnet wallet because I have to do some tests.
Oh, okay, all right. But yeah, that's ready for testing.
Rashid have a question for our community members.
Yeah, guys. In your place of work or business, what would it take for you to start accepting Zcoin? You guys are the best litmus test for people like yourselves, right? Yeah, I think that one of the main problems that we have with every sort of conversation on adoption is the question is always, how do we get other people to start accepting Zcoin, right? And yeah, it's like right now my company Arcadia accepts Zcoin, and so does my family accounting firm. And I'm thinking, what would it take for people that work with my family firm or people that work with Arcadia to start accepting Zcoin, and just starting in one point and kind of spreading from there. And yeah, D-Holiday, that's actually a really good idea. In terms of starting in one area, do you mean like one industry or like one physical location? For people listening to this recording later, D-Holiday is saying I was focusing on one area and getting it highly used in one area. And I realized that probably someone's going to need to take a transcript of the text chat while this call is going so that they don't get lost while listening.
Don't worry, I have the chat recorded on video as well.
Awesome. So for a physical location, that's something that would definitely be an interesting experiment. It's called. Ruben, do you think that would be something that would make sense with like the prompt pay stuff, or maybe, or yeah, state as well? We could Zcoin takes Texas.
So it's repeating someone's. Okay, so I mean, prompt pay stuff is a bit of a. Currently, there's a bit of some hiccups because of regulatory requirements. I need to get the details from Parliament. We're still working on that, but it's quite hard. But yeah, if you have a test case somewhere, you know, one of the things is that you can get someplace accepting it, but how are you going to get users to use it? Because Zcoin users are kind of like geographically separated, right? And I feel that like a virtual thing would be better, like because just our community is so distributed. If you open up a physical location, you're not going to get that necessary density to actually get meaningful traction. So yeah, and then that's kind of like one of my big concerns of a physical location.
So for users, that's similar in terms of online traction as well, right? Sure, you have a larger pool to deal with, but getting people to spend with Zcoin in the first place is kind of the only battle that we really have to win, right? Once we get people actually wanting to spend it, then everything else kind of falls into play, right?
Yeah, I mean, like for example, like if you spend Zcoin on Bully VPN, you get a 10% discount, right? I mean, that's one of the things that I do. But
10% discount.
yeah, you get Chase card gives 10%.
Yeah, it's like Amex offers me 7.5, and Discover has some pretty good rates as well.
It's nuts.
Now you guys know which of my accounts to hack.
Okay, so I guess we'll be wrapping off this meeting. But if anyone wants to talk about like adoption and stuff like that,
Do feel free to create a trade on the forum as well. Lots of discussions going there. More long-term time rather than having them in chat and not many people. It's not permanent.
hey, I was thinking about we talk about the tip bot. I think that's a really good idea to just get starting people using Zcoin and receipt. Do you know how to get that implemented?
Yeah, I just need a server to put it up on. I already I forked off of this guy who made it up for a different project, and it works fine with Zcoin. Just need to put it on a server and run it.
Okay, I mean, if you need us to set up VPS with that, just let us know.
Yeah, that'd be great. Let's talk on Telegram after.
Okay, so any other questions? If not, All right, that's the end of this meeting. We have hopefully we can get transcripts of this soon. And thanks everyone for participating. And also you can always put it in the Telegram chat. And if you do want to have like a big opinion that you want to be heard, please put it in the forums instead, so that it doesn't get lost. All right, thanks guys, and
Stay safe.
stay safe.
Cheers, everyone.
Moin moin.